Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Deep Thoughts. And today we are talking about Ascendance of a Bookworm, Episode 3, The Events of Winter. Before we begin, though, I would like to give a big shout out to my boy at Nacho Gashardo over on Twitter for sharing last week's video, and hey, if you would like to have your name shouted out in next week's Bookworm video, then be sure to share this video around on the internet and then tag me at JoJo Talks Too Much over on Twitter, and I will be sure to shout your name out in next week's video. Okay, so when it comes to this week, we got two things that I would like to talk about. First, we gotta talk about the winds of winter, and then we gotta talk about the ongoing book Odyssey. So let's go ahead and start with the winter aspect of the episode, because to me, this saved the episode from being a B status episode, since we basically got sort of the same stuff in regards to the book Odyssey. Still good stuff, but similar stuff. But with the whole winter aspect of this week's episode, it genuinely elevated this week's episode quite a bit for me. So we actually start off and we see that winter has finally come for the little kingdom whose name I don't think we've learned yet. Don't even know the name of the place we're at. My goodness. But the winter has finally come for our little village, and we have this sweet soundtrack playing as Mine is sort of like resting by the fire and watching her mom and her sister work on something while Gunther's off guarding the main wall. And it's genuinely really sweet. I actually just think it's like an abundantly charming moment to start the episode with, since it actually really gives off this snowed in sort of feel. Like when you've been in Canada for as many moons as I have been. I have lived in Canada my entire life, and this place gets snowy in the winter. Like it's not a rare occurrence to be snowed in. And when I was a kid, it was funny to see how not childlike I was, in the sense that I was childish, but when it came to certain things, I was more of an old man. Like, as a kid, I actually liked being snowed in. Other kids would want to run around and play in the snow, but when it got too much and you ended up not being able to go outside, I got excited by that. I don't know why. Even as I had been told as a kid that I had an old spirit, that I was a kid. I did a lot of kid stuff, but I had an old spirit. I don't know what that means, but to this day, it kind of rings true. And watching this episode reminded me of those days being a kid and getting snowed in and being like, oh man, we got to do something inside the house. We got to have fun in the house. And so everybody would get like little projects to do or board games or whatever. And that's the vibe I got from this, where it's like, okay, so we're snowed in. That sucks, but that doesn't mean that we can't be productive. So we're going to go and do our own little projects. Like as a kid, it would be like board games, or my dad would hand me like the Game Boy and I'd watch soap operas with my mom when we got snowed in. And here, obviously they can't do that. So instead, it's this really sweet, charming little scene to open the episode with. And that sort of snowed in, we're banding the team together. The family's gonna band together during the winter to kind of ride out the snow and get by just being good to each other, and that sort of warm feeling that the winter brings, ironically enough, that maintains in this whole episode, and I really, really dug it. And it's funny because I had this thought where they're all working on their own projects, and I had assumed that now would be the best possible time for Mine to actually get to work and start making papyrus. And she certainly starts. And I'm like, now's the time, Mine. Now is your moment. Except apparently not, because it takes a really long time to make papyrus, and neither Mine nor I had really come to grips with the fact that, yeah, that would take forever and it was never gonna happen. So yeah, of course Mine just kind of gives up, and I'm like, you know what? That's fine. And even she's like, it's cool. I'll just make baskets, I guess, until this all blows over, and then I can make clay. So it's like, all right, clay works. Let's make clay tablets then. That works too, I suppose. But Mine is just, she's a persistent cat, and I dig her quite a bit. And it's not even just that, right? Like, so Mine kind of gives up on making papyrus, but it's not as though she spends the winter just kind of sulking around, because we actually see that she makes use of, I believe, what they're called parus. I can't remember what the fruit is called, but it's one of the first little moments of like, oh yeah, there's magic in this world. I kind of forgot about that. And it comes from a scene with Turi and Gunther, which is a very quick but very beautiful and again very effectively winter scene, and it's Turi and Gunther being the pops, and the two of them go to get this fruit called parus or parus, I don't remember. They're basically winter versions of coconuts, kind of, sort of, it basically. And it's interesting because the way it works is Turi has to like warm up the branch in order for the fruit to fall. But you see like the amount of effort that she's putting into it, but just because of how calloused and red her hands are. Like Turi is no joke, and we've known that for a while. Turi's a hardworking kid, but it really shines through in this moment. I really think that they show how dedicated Turi is to being a good big sister and being a good kid to her parents, and Gunther is like cheering her on from the bottom. I was sort of thinking like, how come Gunther's not doing this? shouldn't the dad be doing this? But I guess maybe he can't climb the tree or something. I'm not super sure, or maybe he also did his turn plucking the parus fruit as well. I have no idea, but this scene is brilliantly handled because I thought seeing Turi step up was great. And also just the fact that it screams winter. That crystal ice tree, that tree made of ice, was dope. And it was, again, one of the first moments that reminded me that, oh yeah, this is an isekai. We're definitely going to get some fantasy elements to the show. And seeing these ice trees was genuinely this magical, for lack of a better word, moment, and I was really impressed by it. But as I was saying, in regards to how this affected Mine, this actually meant that Mine didn't just sit around and sulk while she couldn't make papyrus. She actually ended up using this weird ice fruit to make pancakes, or paru cakes, as they call it, because, you know, they can't, there's no pan, so they just have to call them what the fruit's named after, and it's close enough to pancakes. And seeing pancakes again made my Canadian self all kinds of happy, and I'm sure the New Day were just as excited as I was. But yeah, seeing Mine using her skills from our world to make both pancakes and I believe she makes she uses the fruit mixed with bird feed to like make a new snack, which I was like, ew, but like, okay, that works too, I suppose. It was a cool scene, and again, it really showed that Mine is much more suited to being in this position than maybe other people might have been. She's very well equipped because of the amount of books that she read and the amount of activities that she used to do in her world with her own mother back in like the regular world. So I think all of those experiences have come into play in big ways for Mine, and she's been able to use them effectively. And seeing her like showing off her cooking skills on top of her myriad of other skills is still really effective, and it never feels cheap to me because there's skills that it's not like, oh, how would she know all of that? That's ridiculous. No, like I can absolutely, like, yeah, of course she knows how to make pancakes. It's not like pancakes are exactly hard to make. Or like her learning how to, like, or like her knowing certain things that I'm like, no, of course, like a bookworm would have absorbed that knowledge at some point down the line. And it's not like she recalls it immediately and is a total expert. It's just stuff that she has learned over time in her previous life that she's able to bring over to her life as Mine. And speaking of which, the last project that they get to in winter is genuinely really abundantly sweet, especially since we see Gunther getting all emotional when he realizes that he can actually help Mine make something, and that is the hairpin that they give to Turi. And the hairpin, first of all, is really, really pretty, especially given the tools that they had to make it. I was shocked at how well it looked. And I am just so abundantly charmed by this family. This show continues to be so sweet and so wholesome, and seeing Gunther be so proud of his two kids, that Mine was so caring for her sister that she was able to make this item, and that Turi is so hardworking and so dedicated to the family, and that the mom was able to help them make stuff, and that the Gunther finally got to hear that "I love you, Dad," and he's like, yes, I did the thing, and it was just super sweet. And again, like it's further emphasizes how dang wholesome the show is. And the show's biggest accomplishment is just how freaking wholesome it is. It is so abundantly sweet. And like all of this was, like all of that moment was for Turi, who has been working hard the entire show. And seeing her get to look nice and fancy for her baptism was freaking dope. And speaking of baptism, that actually leads me nicely into the second part of the video that I want to talk about, that being the ongoing book Odyssey and how it relates to the world as we are coming to know it. So we learn in this week's episode that at age 7, kids are baptized and then given apprenticeships. And that usually is sort of similar to what their parents do. So Tori, she wants to be a seamstress, so she'll probably be with her mom or apprenticing with another seamstress. And I thought that that was really neat. The idea that this world's characters are sort of like given jobs at sort of a young age, but it's not necessarily a job, it's just more of like learning under a specific person. So instead of having a school, these kids just end up taking up apprenticeships. And yeah, for a peasant town, that makes a lot of sense. I think that works out for their world. And I do think 7's kind of young to start an apprenticeship. But again, it's a medieval-esque fantasy town. I guess that makes sense. And the whole baptism thing, I think, is going to lean in or play more of a bigger role as we go, because the religion of this world we're not really told much about, or even how magic really works in this town. So I am kind of curious about how that will work if we see the church that Tori's going to get baptized at. Or maybe seeing what Tori gets up to during her apprenticeship. That'd be kind of interesting to see. And while Tori wants to be a seamstress, of course, Mine wants to write books, or make books, as she says in this week's episode. And it sort of is going to be, a little bit complicated, given that Mine still doesn't even know the full alphabet of this world that she has stumbled into, but that's fine because she has good old Otto! Otto is back in this week's episode. I am so friggin' happy, except Otto, as it turns out, is a happily married man. No! I'm fine, everything's fine, I'm fine, it's cool, it's fine, I'm not even upset, no, it's cool, cool. I'm, you know what, Otto, it's fine, I'm hurt that I was not made aware of this information last week, before I fell in love, but that's okay, I'm fine, I'll get over it, I won't. But especially given the scene that we get with Otto in this week, where he's again just being the kindest, sweetest dude on the planet, just this hard-working guy. And the funny thing is, knowing that he's happily married also just makes me like this character all the more. So it's like, dang it, like, what a good dude. Otto's such a good dude. And it wounds me so. It wounds me to know that Otto is married. But it's fine, because it means he's happy, and, it's cool. I'm happy for him. Totally happy. No, I'm kidding. But seriously, the scene with Otto and Mine is super friggin' sweet, and Otto actually finding out that Mine is really good with numbers, I think, is sort of an interesting moment, and again, kind of hammers on the fact that the family has started to notice, not just the family, other characters now are starting to notice that Mine is a lot sharper than she used to be, a lot more kind of quirky and interesting. But the family, and I'm assuming Otto as well, just aren't really gonna kind of take that into account because they're just happy that Mine is up and about again, although we know what really happened, which makes that whole scene very bittersweet. Which is a sad note to end this video on, but there you go. With that said, though, everybody, I'm gonna go ahead and put this week's episode again solidly into the A tier. And for those of you keeping up at home, that means that every single episode of the show so far has been A tier, making it probably the top show of the season for me thus far. But My Hero Academia and SAO and a bunch of other shows are also airing this season, so... On that note, everybody, that just about wraps everything up. But before we go, as always, I want to give a big shout out to the good folks over on Patreon, namely those in the Earl Grey tier: Calvin Atkinson, Crowbar of Irony, Dominic, Urza, Ginkotaku, No For Nothing, Maria Teresa, Mirth Mouser, Omner Garamond, Cell, Shadow Creative, Sipco Games, Somastan, Steven, Tristan, and Verdon. Thank you all so much for your continued support over on Patreon, and hey, if you too would like to join the T Squadron, then by all means go ahead and check out that first link in the description to check out our Patreon page, see all the cool rewards you can get for as little as $1 a month, and get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord. But on that note, everybody, that's going to be a video, so I hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, you've probably been on the internet long enough to know what to do already, so I ain't going to tell you, but I will say that it is appreciated, and if you are feeling stressed out today, then you go have yourself a warm cup of tea, and I will talk to you all again real soon.